السادة الحضور، ندعوكم لأخذ مقاعدكم لبدء جلستنا التالية.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated as we begin our next session. Thank you.
Okay.
حضورنا الكريم،
لا اوكي عندي اوكي هي شغال تشك.
حضورنا الكريم، جلستنا التالية تحمل عنوان السياسات التي ترسم ملامح الاقتصاد القائم على الذكاء الاصطناعي.
Moving on to the fourth session titled Policies Shaping AI-Driven Economies.
تستضيف الجلسة كل من البروفسور إليزابيث تشرشل، أستاذة ورئيسة قسم في جامعة محمد بن زايد للذكاء الاصطناعي.
We have Professor Elizabeth Churchill, Professor and Department Chair at MBZ UAI.
والبروفسور سانا كاريغاني، أستاذة ممارسات الذكاء الاصطناعي في كلية كنيغز لندن.
Professor Sana Karigani, Professor of Practice in AI, King's College, London.
ووالتر بسكواريلي، مستشار وباحث ومتحدث في سياسات الذكاء الاصطناعي التوليدي.
And Walter Pasquarelli, advisor, researcher, and speaker on Gen AI policy.
يدير هذه الجلسة رون يونغ، مؤسس مجموعة شركاء المعرفة.
This session will be moderated by Ron Young, founder of Knowledge Associates International Group. We kindly invite you to begin this session. Please welcome on stage.
Okay. Yep, my hands there. What? Is the mic on? So good? Okay. And okay, welcome everybody to this final session before lunch. Yes, my name is Ron Young. My background is really in writing international standards, first for knowledge, ISO 30401 in 2018, then innovation management, ISO 56001 this year, September 2024, and ISO 42001, which is the AI management standard, which was published in December 2023. Welcome to this session on policy shaping AI-driven economies. As AI continues to reshape industry, society, and daily life, thoughtful, inclusive policies are essential to ensure that its benefits are widely shared and ethically grounded. So today we're going to take a very brief look at some of the key policy areas, from ethical frameworks, economic growth, education, workforce impacts, innovation, AI for the social good. It's a very broad area that we're talking, and the way that it's shaping and harnessing AI's potential. I'm thrilled to introduce our expert speakers today, who bring diverse insights into how we can build a responsible and resilient AI-powered future. So I'm going to start, if I may, with Professor Sana Karigani. Welcome. And may I start with you? You are a professor of practice at AI in King's College, London, trustee for the Future of Work, an independent research and development institute exploring how new technologies are transferring work and working lives. As AI policy lead for Responsible AI UK, and advisor and former head of the UK Government Office for Artificial Intelligence, which covered digital, culture, media, business, energy, industry, and much, much more. Tell me a little more about your work, your interests, and your initial thoughts on policies shaping AI economies.
Thank you very much, Ron. It's such a pleasure to be here with you today at the Knowledge Summit in Dubai. I've been working, as you said, at the intersection of technology and business for over 2 decades, and predominantly over the past decade in government policy and transformation, culminating in setting up the Office for AI, which was at the heart of the UK government. We published the UK's National AI Strategy and the AI Regulation White Paper. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about where I think we are at the moment. Essentially, right now, I think that we are on the cusp of seeing the productivity gains from AI adoption. So far, it's been a lot slower than the expectations and all of the hype demanded. But I posit that's for 2 main reasons. The first one is that we're still not entirely sure of the optimal ways of using things like large language models in many cases. We haven't found the killer app for these things yet. And then the second is appropriate and clear regulation. Especially for our most traditional sectors, I think not knowing where liability lies or what to expect if/when things go wrong makes leaders nervous about adopting AI technologies at large scales. I'm going to use a crude analogy here, but it wasn't until the invention of the seatbelt that people started to drive cars really, really fast. So we're not going to be able to see fast adoption of these technologies until we get an AI seatbelt or clear AI regulation. I thought it also might be useful to do a very quick rundown of where we are with regulation, if that's all right. So we today have the EU AI Act that was created by the European Commission. We have the UK government's approach to AI regulation, and we have the United States executive order. But we also have a brand new government in the UK, so we have a Labour government that's been talking about an AI bill that should be coming out any day now. And we also have a new president-elect in the United States who is very likely to repeal President Biden's executive order. So I'm going to park the fact that these changes are happening just for a moment and give you a rundown of where things stand until they change. So we have the risk-based approach, which is a horizontal legislation in the EU AI Act. This means that the law applies to any and all AI systems placed or used within the EU. But there is also an extraterritorial aspect to that, which means actually it doesn't matter if it was created in the EU, the law still applies. There is, in the UK, the principle-based vertical approach, which means that the UK is relying on the expertise of existing regulators and their deep sectoral knowledge to tailor the implementation of regulation based on the specific context of that AI regulation. And the principles this is based on are 5. The first is safety, security, and robustness. The second is appropriate transparency and explainability. The third is fairness, accountability, and governance. And the fourth is contestability, and the fifth is redress. So the question comes, which one of these 2 ways, horizontal or vertical, is the right way? Who knows? Probably neither. Actually, the answer is probably somewhere in the middle. And what we've seen is that these approaches are getting closer to each other. Just to kind of round off, the US has, under President Biden, an executive order which very clearly lays out a huge number of voluntary regulatory methods. Again, it's very likely that President Trump, when he's in office, will repeal this. There's a question about what the new rules and regulations under Trump will look like. There is a potential that he'll go back to his original term in 2019. He had something called American AI. So this was about putting, lowering boundaries of adoption across federal governments, and also directing US government agencies to lower regulation and create more innovative, friendly regulation to allow faster adoption of AI technology, so using existing regulation rather than creating anything new. It's also unlikely that Trump is going to want to introduce anything to slow down innovation by his startups in the country. So there's a question mark right now around the future of the AI Safety Institute as well. For me, the key is that we need to get the right policies in place to ensure that we do not develop these technologies in a vacuum. AI technologies are affecting the way we work, the way we study, the way we play, and the way that we live. So there's a real imperative on working together to get this right today.
Thank you, Sana. I'm going to move to you, Walter Pasquarelli. You are an internationally recognized advisor to Google, Microsoft, Coca-Cola, Meta. You're an international speaker and expert on AI strategy, generative AI, and data governance. You specialize in strategic planning, AI policy, ethical and regulatory frameworks, and macroeconomic technology trends. You led the first globally focused AI index, benchmarking countries' readiness to uptake emerging technologies across key industries and markets. So tell us more about your experience, interests, and initial thoughts on policies for AI-driven economies.
Well, thank you so much, first of all, for the very kind introduction, and especially to all the organizing team here who have put together this wonderful event and has brought us here from all over the world. So my name is Walter Pasquarelli, really a pleasure being here. A little bit about myself. I first spent my career working at The Economist, where I used to cover the development of AI, both from a technological point of view as well as from the point of view of like policy development. Next to my work that I'm doing right now in advising governments and businesses, I'm also an affiliate at the Bennett Institute in Cambridge, and I'm an advisor to the OECD. So as far as AI readiness is concerned, and when it comes to what should a country be doing in order to support their AI ecosystem become the best possible version of themselves, there's actually a few things that historically we used to look at. The one thing is, of course, the infrastructure. We used to look at the policy and the regulatory environment, as well as the political will that countries have, and of course, the startup ecosystem. Now, part of advising the UAE, part of the challenge is that the UAE is incredibly good when it comes to AI policy and regulation, and in the past years, they have been doing a lot of progress as far as AI policies is concerned. So this year, I'm aware that there has been the launch of MGX, which is like a $100 billion investment fund, which will be working in infrastructure, in chip manufacturing. So there is a lot of work that is already being undertaken. When asking myself, what is the way that I could potentially add some value to this conversation? I think, as Professor Karagani already highlighted, there is a lot going on in terms of AI regulatory developments. She described, I think, in a very detailed manner, how the US has been approaching things. And of course, as we are all aware, there have been elections in the last 2 weeks in the United States. And those elections and the incoming administrations will bring up some major changes to the world of AI policy. Now, over the past year, I've been spending some time interacting both with US policymakers as well as with some people within the inner circle of the incoming US presidency. And I would like to outline a few points that I think will be relevant to understand as far as the new US AI policy approach is concerned. Roughly speaking, I believe that we can summarize the US AI policy, the upcoming AI policy, into 5 steps. that we call the 5Ds. The first one is going to be deregulation. And as Professor Carregani already explained, we can expect a departure from possibly the executive order towards an AI policy framework that will be more innovation friendly. So one that has even less standards, has even less stringent requirements than the one that we see today, but possibly a return to the US AI agenda. So one that is really even more private sector friendly. So that is a very sharp distinction from what we see in the European Union, for example. The other point is this decentralization, and this is an influence that I think has been pushed predominantly from Mr. Musk, who has been a key advisor to the current, to the Trump administration and the policies that they will be developing. J.D. Vance, the VP-elect himself as well, is a big fan of these open source approaches. So we can see, I think, a lot of policies that will be promoting these ideas of developing open source AI models, again, to on the one hand focus more on the innovation, less on the regulation and the safeguards, but more on putting the uses of these technologies directly into the hands of users and consumers. The third step is then decoupling. Decoupling is basically the idea that the United States will be involved less in international fora, such as the OECD, such as the General Partnership on AI, mostly because there's going to be an inward focus and less of a priority in trying to shape the institutions that develop the standards surrounding AI development. That is something that was relatively similar as well between 2016 and 2020, where the majority of international AI policies initiatives were spearheaded by the Canadians and the French, and I think with the incoming administration this is going to be very similar as well. The fourth point is going to be defunding. The Trump administration, from the sources that we have observed, from the sources that we have obtained, will be putting more a priority on tariffs and export controls, as opposed to including subsidies or promoting the development through tax breaks, as we have seen in the CHIPS Act, which saw $53 billion in subsidies for the developing of domestic chip manufacturing facilities. There is a good chance that some of these elements around the CHIPS Act will stay, but from what we can see, a lot of the funding that has been provided will be scaled down a bit. And the final point is then domestic energy, which means effectively a departure from renewables. Trump has repeatedly come up with statements such as drill baby drill, which effectively means prioritizing natural or traditional energy sources such as oil and gas. We have seen that one of the reasons for that is that a lot of the data centers that are being used to train these AI models effectively face energy shortages, and because renewables are not able to keep up with them yet, the incoming US administration will likely prioritize traditional energy sources in order to be able to meet those energy demands. There's a number of implications this will have for the UAE and a number of opportunities. The number one thing, just to keep it short, and I'll be happy to elaborate on that later on today, is that there is a real regulatory gap that they're able to fill. The European Union AI Act will now become the de facto most important regulation that is out there, but there's a lot of companies that might find them too stringent. So there's an opportunity for the UAE to provide almost a different regulatory regime that still focuses on safety more than the US one, but has a more pro-innovation approach compared to the European Union. So there it's about finding the middle ground. And the other thing is, with the US stepping out from some of these international standards, again, the UAE has an opportunity here to be able to shape the global policies and standards within international bodies, but also developing their own institutions, primarily for emerging economies and the global south.
Thank you, Walter, thank you. And now I'm going to move on to Professor Elizabeth Churchill, if I may. Welcome. Since May this year, you are the Professor and Department Chair for MBZ UAI, which is the Mohammed bin Zayed University of Artificial Intelligence, which is a research-based academic institution located in Abu Dhabi. You are the professor of...
أنت أستاذ التفاعل الكمبيوتر والذكاء الاصطناعي والبشري، مصمم للاستخدام في عدد من الشركات جوجل، إيباي، ياهو، زيروكس، وعلى مدى 10 سنوات حتى الانضمام إلى MDZEI كنت المدير العام لجوجل في سان فرانسيسكو، منطقة سان فرانسيسكو. هل لك أن تطلعنا عن عملك واهتماماتك وأفكارك الأولية في هذا المجال؟ شكرا لك، وأشكر المنظمين وأشكر زملائي على المنصة وأشكر الحضور على الوجود معنا والإصغاء لنا. ما أود أن أخبركم عنه، أنا وصلت قبل 13 أسبوعا إلى الإمارات وانتقلت من سيليكون فالي قبل 30 عاما تقريبا، واخترت القدوم إلى هنا ودخول في وسط الأكاديمي لعدة أسباب. أولها أن هذا المجال كان يستثمر في الابتكار كثيرا، وحيث الجامعة التي انضممت إليها هي الجامعة الأولى في الذكاء الاصطناعي عالميا، أتيت بسبب الاستثمار، والاستثمار كان قوي ومهم. فقبل هذه الفقاعة الكبيرة حول ال AI كانت هذه الجامعة موجودة. هذه الدولة تعمل بشكل قوي في مجالات مبتكرة، وهناك الكل يركز حول الرغبة في الاستدامة، المناخ، الصحة والتعليم. الاستثمار هنا رائع جدا، لذلك اخترت أن أكون هنا. اخترت أيضا أن أكون هنا كمعلمة، لأنني أعتقد كشخص يفكر بالأجيال القادمة كثيرا إن كنا قادرين على تعليم الجيل القادم وقياداتهم في هذا الجزء من العالم الذي يتخذ موقفا في أن يكون قائدا للمستقبل، عندها أعتقد أننا سنستطيع أن نفعل ما هو جيد للجميع. زملائي يعملون على مستوى السياسات والحوكمة، أنا أعمل حول التصميم، كيف تصمم البيكسلز على شاشة الهاتف، حتى السياسات. أنا أتشارك مع بعضهم لندرس ما هي البيانات لنحولها لاستخدامات، والممارسات في المؤسسات التي تؤدي إلى منتجات مرتبطة بالذكاء الاصطناعي للمستهلك وللصناعات، وما هي عمليات التصنيع وكيف يتم تقييمها قبل إطلاقها للأسواق، وما هي العمليات التي نحتاجها لكي نضمن أننا نفهم الأثر ونكون على دراية بالتبعات التي يمكن أن تكون سلبية، وأن نكون لدينا تفكير سلبي على ما يجب أن نبنيه وإن كان علينا ذلك. عملي كان يدور حول العمل مع الآخرين لنحدد ما هي المعايير وما الحوكمة التي نحتاجها، وما هي الحكومات المرنة أو الحوكمة المرنة التي تستطيع مواكبة التطور في العالم. فالزملاء يتحدثون عن سرعة التغيير. نحن بحاجة لعمليات مصممة قادرة على مواكبة هذا التغيير، وأن نقفز وأن نقول أننا نفكر قبل أن نتحرك. وأمر آخر ويأتي من عالم التصميم، عندما وضعت أحزمة الأمان كانت فرصة رائعة في الأمان، لكن النساء والأطفال تأذوا من هذه أحزمة الأمان، وبالتالي كان لابد من تعديل هذه الأحزمة لتناسب الجميع وأن تكون قادرة على التأقلم مع مختلف أشكال الأجسام لابد من إعادة تصميم مرارا وتكرارا بأعين حذرة وبمرونة كبيرة، ونستطيع أن نفعل ذلك عندما نتحاور جميعنا بخبرائنا وغير الخبراء ليكون توجهنا متعدد التوجهات، لأن الذكاء الاصطناعي متعدد الأوجه ويحتاج لتنوع في المعالجة. الجامعات تركز فقط على جانب، لكن نحن بحاجة لأن نعرف كيف نعلم الجيل القادم ليأتي بتصميم حساس ليفكروا بمهنية وبأخلاقية للتعاون مع الشركاء وتعددية التخصصات. جميعنا يجب أن نكون في هذا الحوار. شكرا لكم جميعا. شكرا لك إليزابيث. لدينا بضع دقائق. النظام الأول، مكتب الذكاء الاصطناعي في الاتحاد الأوروبي قال أن لديهم معايير للمعرفة وللذكاء الاصطناعي صممتها مؤسسات خاصة، والذكاء وقانون الذكاء الاصطناعي هو الاعتبارات الإنسانية والأخلاقيات، والمعايير أيضا هي لتفي بمتطلبات القانون الأوروبي. هذا هو البعد الإنساني المهتم. في الدقائق المتبقية، كيف تعلقون على وجود جسر في صنع السياسات ووضع القوانين؟ كيف ترون ذلك؟ هل من أحد يود أن يبدأ في؟ نعم، أرى أن هناك جسر فعلا بين المعايير والقوانين. فالمعايير هي آلية للتداخل بينه عبر الحدود، ومن الصعب جدا أن نتفق عبر الحدود الدولية على ماهية السياسات والقوانين في هذا القطاع التكنولوجي وما يحتاجه كل اقتصاد. وأعتقد أن هذه المعايير تعطينا قدرة لتمكين الشركات من تبادل التطبيقات والاستخدامات التي تمكن التكنولوجيا لأن تنجح وتتمثل في هذه التقنيات. حيوية المجتمع مهمة وكما قالت إليزابيث أن التطبيقات التي ستنجح بحاجة أن يكون لديها نكهة خاصة.
And so standards, I think, gives us that opportunity to have the same.
تفي باحتياجات كل مجتمع. لابد من وجود الحماية، إلا أنه لابد من وجود هذه النكهات الخاصة لكل مكان. سأعلق على هذا بسرعة بدون إطار عام للتفكير. سيكون هناك صراخ من هنا أو هناك بأن الذكاء الاصطناعي مرعب وأنه غير أخلاقي، لكن الاعتراف وتكريم الاختلافات عبر الثقافات نجد إطار عام للحوار وللتفكير. بعض الأحيان يقول أن هناك من يقول أن المعايير مقيدة، بل هي موجودة لأن تكون جزء من حوار وتوجهه ليكون مبتكرا ومبدعا. نعم، نحن نهتم بهذه المعايير وكيف يمكن أن تكون وكيف يمكن أن تتغير عبر الزمن. شكرا لك ووكر. نعم، وأكيد كل ما قالته الزملاء، لكن من الأمور التي أعتقد أنها مهمة لأن نضيفها إلى الحوار، ونحن ندخل في هذه الحقبة التي فيها تطوير الذكاء الاصطناعي مركز على المؤسسات. المعايير مهمة ونجحت في أن تكون موجها للمؤسسات لتعرف ماذا يجب أن تفعل مع تقنية تتطور بسرعة كبيرة، لكن بالذكاء الاصطناعي الابتكاري أعتقد أنه مهم. فكثير من الأدوات متاحة ويسهل استخدامها ولا يوجد لها أي حماية، ووضع المعايير وإدارتها سيكون أصعب ويصعب السيطرة عليها. فمن السهل أن نفهم كيف تستخدم التقنية، لكن من الصعب دراسة الأفراد والشخصيات التي تشكل خطرا مختلفة. فهنا كثير من العمل الحكومي والتركيز الحكومي نحتاجه في هذا المجال لمعرفة المخاطر وما يمكن أن يشكل تحديا أمام ما نعتبره أمر حقيقي وواقعي. الوقت يداهمنا. شكرا لكم. أولا حصلنا على بعض الأفكار الجيدة. أود أن أشكر المتحدثين، وأود أن أشكر مؤسسة المعرفة على هذه الجلسة. غداء طيبا. شكرا لكم.